Welcome to another edition of The Walking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of EPL on Pub.
Class is in session, hitting the books on Pub Sports.
This is another exciting edition of the main event on Talking Man.
Class is in session, hitting the books, Pub Sports Radio, Monday, November 7th. Ian Cameron and Conor Mac back with you, ready to break down the Monday college football slate, or not the Monday slate, the week slate ahead in college football, weeknight action, and Saturday marquee games in college football. We don't have many weeks left in the regular season. It's incredible how quickly the season has gone by. We've got tons of weeknight action this week with Mac football. We've got some Sun Belt football, AAC in action over weeknight. We've got a Pac-12 game, Mountain West. Great weeknight slate. So we will start on Tuesday, November the 8th. We have 3 Maction college football games, and we will start with Eastern Michigan as they take on Akron in this one. Eastern Michigan, 7.5-point road favorites, 56 being the total here in this game. Very bad season, obviously, for Akron, 1-8. Can't go bowling, really nothing but playing for exercise, essentially, for this Akron Zips team here down the stretch. You have both teams that are off a bye week. That's normally the case with these early week MAC games. It's usually both teams coming off the bye. That's the case here. Eastern Michigan off a heartbreaking loss to Toledo, 27-24 in their last game. They had won 3 of their last 5. Akron losing 27-9 to Miami O. They are catching points here. They've actually been okay as an underdog. They've pretty much been an underdog in every game this season except the very first game they played. Every game against an FBS team, they have been a dog this year. They've covered 4 of the last 6, so they have been competitive at times. We'll see with Eastern Michigan here on the road. Now, Eastern Michigan, when you look at their road numbers this year, at least in MAC play, 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread. 4-point dogs at Western Michigan win in blowout fashion. 2.5-point road dogs at Ball State, and they end up winning that game 20-16. Certainly, Eastern Michigan has got a better offense. Akron has definitely struggled offensively. DJ Irons, their quarterback's been up and down a little bit. It's a game that I don't have a strong feel on. I think if this was less than a touchdown, I'd be more interested in Eastern Michigan. Above a touchdown, it's getting up there, and a team that I usually prefer in the underdog role as opposed to the favorite, but I don't know if I'm all that anxious and excited to back a one-win team here. Although, again, with this conference, crazier things have happened, and, Akron, it's just a matter of where are they at mentally here for a season where they're just stuck on one win. They can't even get to a bowl game at this point. Where's that motivation going to come from this late in the season? What do you think here, Conor Mac, Eastern Michigan, Akron?
Yeah, this one, I don't know if I get involved either. We talk about Eastern Michigan. We always love them as a dog. Now they're laying more than a touchdown on the road. They took care of business against Western Michigan on the road, but a lot of their games, you mentioned the Ball State was a solid win. I mean, they only beat UMass at home by 7. So now they go on the road, and you mentioned Akron's been kind of hit and miss. That, they covered against Toledo a few games, and they've gotten blown out in a few others. So I don't know what we're quite going to get with them. I do know Akron's given up at least 21 every game all year. So I think we get some points here. It's just, does it get over? I lean that way here today. And, if I had to on the side, look, I lean Akron. It seems like we love Eastern Michigan, Ian. They cover as dog, but now they're a favorite of more than a touchdown on the road, and they won't get it done. So it keeps me just either off of this or look the other way with the points with Akron.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely some truth to that. We'll have to see what Akron brings to the table. This is an important game for Eastern Michigan. They can clinch bowl eligibility with a victory here if they win this game. So this is pretty important for the Eagles. 5-4. You want to get bowl eligibility done when you get the chance. We'll see if they can wrap it up with a win here on Tuesday night. Another Tuesday night MAC contest here. In-state battle. Ohio Bobcats, Miami, Ohio Redhawks. We've got basically at near a pick'em in this game pretty much across the board. We're seeing Ohio 1.5-point road favorites, 50.5 the total in this game. I think the total's just too low, honestly, in this game. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Ohio Bobcats offense. Curtis Rourke just laid absolute waste to that Buffalo Bulls defense last week. I split that game. I got it completely wrong with Buffalo. They ended up losing 45-24, the Bulls, in that game to Ohio. But I did cash the over in that Buffalo-Ohio game. And Curtis Rourke playing well right now for this team. I think he's getting better in the passing game. They've got some weapons. The O-line's been good. But their defense is still a little bit leaky. It was better against Buffalo. I will say this. It was probably one of the better defensive efforts of the entire season. Better than the Northern Illinois performance, in my opinion, on defense because, they faced Buffalo at full strength. Remember, Rocky Lombardi didn't play for Northern Illinois when Ohio played them. So I think that was an even better defensive performance from Ohio against Buffalo in the victory. But now they go on the road, and you look at on the road this year, we've seen them beat down a struggling Western Michigan team, lose to Kent State 31-24. Did cover both road games, though, Ohio. Miami O got Brett Gabbert back a couple of games ago, struggled against Western Michigan. He didn't look like he was 100% in that game. He was a lot better against Akron, although, as we know, Akron not a very good defense or good football team, and they end up winning that game 27-9 last week. But definitely now third game back from injury for Brett Gabbert for Miami. I think that offense should have a good performance here, especially on their home field. It's an offense that's kind of been up and down. Now, Miami O has trended strong to the under, 6-0 to the under. It's kind of been a little bit the opposite here for Ohio. I just thought with the way Ohio's offense is moving, its total looked a little bit too low. Let's also keep in mind last year with these two teams in Ohio, Peden Stadium in Athens, Ohio, Ohio was a 7-point home dog. They won outright, and the final score was 35-33. It flew over the total. So I like the over here. I'd actually lean a little to Miami O as a home dog. I think Ohio, after a big win last week against Buffalo, you got to go on the road, a rivalry game. I actually think now with Gabbert back, Miami's a little bit undervalued. I thought Miami could win the MAC and certainly the East Division before the season started, but then Gabbert got hurt and they haven't really been able to get things going. But here they are, 4-5, 2 more wins. They can still get to a bowl game. I think this is a pretty important game for Miami. It is for Ohio too, because they're in contention for the division. But I'd say be careful playing it on the road here with Ohio because they had that great performance against Buffalo, and yet this line has basically been stuck at 1.5. There's been no movement toward Ohio. I think that's a telling sign. Maybe we have a live home dog here with the Miami O side. What do you think here, Connor? Ohio, Miami O.
Yeah, that's why I'm not too crazy about this one, even though I think they're the better team. Ohio is. It's just heading on the road here. We mentioned it last week. Rourke's been, I think, the best in the MAC, and he proved it again against Buffalo. They were really, really good. Took care of business, as you talked about. It went over. You know what? Ohio, though, against losing teams has played to the under, and then you went to the other side with the Miami, Ohio. They've been under all year. Even against Kent State, some of these teams, that was 27-24. That would get this over, though, or right near there. I don't want anything to do with this because I lean under, but this might just be too low in a MAC game, like you mentioned. Miami O's defense has been solid, and Ohio's offense has been really good. And since Gabbert's been in, the offense been a little bit better. But, they beat Akron. I mean, solid win, 27-9, but nothing crazy. And I go back to them losing to Western Michigan in that dud a couple weeks ago. So, I just don't love it. I think Ohio's the better team. But this won't be an easy one for them. And, right now I lean under. I want this to be higher. I think this total's kind of right where it should be. I was hoping for like a 54-55 and look at the under. So in the end, I might just be off.
All right. The third and final game in Maction for Tuesday night, Ball State and Toledo. We've got the Toledo Rockets laying double digits here at the Glass Bowl. On their home field, 11.5-point home favorites, 50.5 the total in this one. This is probably of all the games on Tuesday. This I think is the game I like the most from a side perspective. I think I'm going to be on the underdog here, Ball State, getting 11.5 in this game. You start to look at Ball State, a team that we know they lost a lot from last year, including the quarterback Drew Plitt from that squad, and it's been it was a rough schedule to begin the season. Think about who they had to play. They had to play, Georgia Southern. They had to play Tennessee in their very first game of the year. Not an easy way to enter the season. But then so they took their lumps in non-conference play, but they've gotten into MAC play, Conor Mac. Look what they've done. Northern Illinois, 3.5-point home dogs, win outright,
Yeah.
44-38. That was a game Lombardi did play for the Huskies in that game. 7.5-point road dogs at Central Michigan, win the game outright. They beat UConn in a non-conference game by 4. A tough loss to Eastern Michigan, 20-16. And then last week, I cashed a ticket with Ball State. You did as well, Conor Mac, at Kent State, winning outright. 27-20 as road underdogs. This quarterback not lighting the world on fire here necessarily, John Paddock, but he's getting better. I thought he was pretty efficient last week, 254 through the air, 2 touchdowns, just the 1 interception. They got a great game from Carson Steele, running the football, almost 200 rushing yards. And I think that's the key. Ball State can run the football, take pressure off Paddock, makes them a little bit more dangerous. And Toledo's run defense isn't great. I mean, 83rd, they're giving up 158 rushing yards per game in college football. I think Ball State hangs close here. And I've seen with Toledo, look, Gleason, by the way, was the quarterback last week. Daquan Finn was a late injury absence, so be careful. Let's monitor his status going into this game. But regardless of who's at quarterback, Toledo has had a knack lately to sleepwalk at times and let teams back into games. Hell, look what happened against Buffalo a few weeks ago. They were up by 3 touchdowns. They lost the game. So they have not played a full, consistent 60 minutes of football in a lot of games recently, and that's concerning when I out of my double-digit favorite, like Toledo is in this game. So I like the Ball State side. I think this is just a little bit too much and too many points to be asking this Toledo team to be laying in this kind of situation. Ball State been money in as a road dog. And also, you look at MAC conference play, the biggest margin of defeat has been 4 points. So Ball State has not been the kind of team we expect to be blown out here in conference play. What do you think here, Connor? Ball State, Toledo.
Yeah, I mean, Toledo had to come from behind. I mean, obviously Eastern Michigan got the cover to get that win because I had the money line. I just have you're right with Toledo. It's been hit and miss. Even with Finn in, they blew that lead like you talked about. Hasn't been great. Obviously, they're a lot better with him in there. You talked about you haven't been. I've been to Ball State, I think, 3 or 4 times this year. I think they got a solid defense. You talked about last week. And Paddock just gets it done. This isn't very exciting offense, but that's what's going to keep him in this game, I believe. As I was looking last night through these, the rivalry, Ball State 7-1 the last 8 times ATS in Toledo. The road team's 11-3 ATS when they've got together the last 15 years. So this is too many points. I'm shocked. We talked about it last week. It was too many points. I was like, this is ridiculous. You were getting 7 with Ball State. This is ridiculous. I think Toledo, a good football team, not 11.5 here. So I love the points with Ball State.
Yeah, when Conor Mac's throwing out words like ridiculous, I think he likes this side a lot here on Tuesday night. I agree. I mean, I think Ball State's Ball State is right behind Toledo in the West Division of the MAC. I mean, Ball State is 3-2 in conference play. Toledo first place at 4-1. I mean, all of a sudden, these two teams are both 4-2 in conference play if Ball State can get the victory here. So it's a very important game here for these two teams, and we think it's just a few too many points here for Toledo. All right, we stay in MACtion, but we move to Wednesday. MAC football, Northern Illinois taking on Western Michigan. We've got a pick 'em here pretty much, 50 the total in this game. Total's being bet down, and I'll tell you what, with what I've seen out of the Northern Illinois offense without Lombardi, particularly last week, again, he was a late absence, which hurt against Central Michigan. And I know they got to 22 points. They did finally start moving the football in the second half. I think part of that, though, was Central Michigan coasting with a big lead. But, this Italian stallion here, Nevin Cremascoli at quarterback for Northern Illinois was not good. 13 of 33, 158 passing yards. Thank goodness they ran the football well. Harrison Whaley had 136 rushing yards for Northern Illinois, but defense could not stop Central, and they lose 35-22. That's now without Rocky Lombardi on the field, 0-2 straight up, 0-2 against the spread for Northern Illinois in their last 2 games. So that tells you how important that quarterback is for Northern Illinois. Some teams can survive the starting quarterback being out. The next guy, it's plug and play. He can get the job done. Not Northern Illinois, not what I've seen here in the last 2 games. So it's difficult to want to back this team. But the money's coming in on Western Michigan because, like I say, I think people have soured on the Northern Illinois offense without Lombardi, but can you trust Western Michigan here? I mean, they've lost 3 of their last 4. They did have a win against Miami a couple weeks ago, 16-10. They couldn't get anything going offensively, just putrid, 13-9, lost to Bowling Green on a weeknight game last week. Trayson Bourget, the quarterback, not very good. Trayson Bourget, a performance you want to forget as far as I'm concerned. Not very good in that game against Bowling Green last week. No offense to speak of. I think the side is dicey here in this game. I know that game snuck over the total with Central, and I was lucky to get the over there. I did bet it, thinking Lombardi would play, and I was worried in that first half, but it just snuck over the total with a bunch of points late in that game. I'd be reluctant to come back to an over here with Northern Illinois, even though they've been a huge over machine. Let's remember the games before that stayed under, including one of them without Rocky Lombardi. And then you look at Western Michigan. It's difficult to bet this team over the total right now. They're not scoring points. 5 of their last 6 games have gone under. This is one of those games where I can understand why they're betting a MAC game under the total, 52 down to 50. Hard to trust either offense. What do you think here, Conor Mac?
Yeah, I think this one could be ugly. I mean, I guess I don't know if Rocky Lombardi plays. Ian. I don't know if he's coming back. I just don't know. I mean, he should have been back 2 weeks ago.
This is a recording. We say this every week. We don't know if he's going to play, and that's the honest truth of it.
And I've heard nothing really about that from anywhere. I don't know that he's coming back. I don't freaking know. Someone knows Rocky Lombardi. Fill me in. Fill us all in. So yeah, if he's not in, I don't want Northern Illinois. They've been competitive a little bit at times. You know, the Ohio game was 24-17. But, man, this is ugly. 2 quarterbacks that aren't good. You know, Jack, Salopek, it's been horrible. I think he's been one of the worst, you know, in the MAC. I mean, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. I shocked he had 7. I thought he had 5. 10 picks. He's been awful all year long. This Western team just has been very good. As a pick 'em, I don't want anything. But, yeah, I'd be on the under here. I think this might be a little bit too high. With these 2 quarterbacks, no Lombardi, give me the under.
All right, Kent State, Bowling Green, another Wednesday MAC contest here. We've got Kent State 2.5-point road favorites, 55.5 being the total here in this game. Bowling Green can reach bowl eligibility with a victory. Kent State, the disappointment continues. I like Bowling Green here, honestly. I don't like the trajectory at all of Kent State right now. Just 2-3 straight up, but 0-5. Against the spread their last 5 games. So they have just been burning money. We just saw them lose outright as a 7-point home favorite to Ball State last week. And we saw them the week before against Akron, and they were off a bye week too. And Akron before that, 16-point home favorites. They barely survived. They win 33-27 by 6 points. They actually got outgained by 37 yards by a 1-win Akron team. So things aren't going very well right now for Kent State. They're 0-5 straight up on the road as well. They're facing a Bowling Green team, Conor Mac, that to me, they got really ripped apart by, they played UCLA, they played Marshall, they played Mississippi State. That's UCLA and Mississippi State, that tough non-conference schedule. They get into MAC play, and other than getting blown out by Buffalo, they just had a horrible game that day. Aside from that, though, beat Akron, went outright as a dog to Miami went outright as a dog to Central Michigan, beat Western ugly last week from the offense, but the defense shut down Western Michigan, still able to get a 13-9 win in that game. Matt McDonald, when he puts it together, he's a good quarterback. And then there's certain instances where he's looked like he's just playing college football for the very first time in his life. I mean, it's been very weird to see it from this guy because I expected him to be pretty good this year now. 3rd year, I believe, starter here with Bowling Green, but it's been a bit of a mess offensively. I think it's a winnable spot for Bowling Green. You're at home, you're a slight dog, you get a win here, and all of a sudden you're bowl eligible. So there's a lot to get excited for, lots at stake here, if you will, for Bowling Green. And when you look at the Kent State side of things, 3-6. You got to win out now just to get bowl eligibility. That's probably not going to happen, especially when you consider they've got Eastern Michigan, Buffalo. They've got some tough games coming up still, Kent State. So I like Bowling Green here. Go with the Falcons here as a slight home underdog. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I like Bowling Green here a little bit as well. It's just what has happened to Kent State, and last week even they come out 13-0. nothing the rest of the game. They got that late touchdown. What's happened with Schlee? Good old Schlee at quarterback. This guy is just nothing anymore. I mean, he ain't slinging around it at all. Is Schlee? They weren't very good on third down, 8 for 20. Flip to the other side, and we know they're not very good defensively, Penn State. On the other side, Bowling Green, sloppy game. You mentioned McDonald, ups and downs. One thing, Bowling Green, though, they've won, 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 even. So ugly games, but they're getting the job done. And the best thing I'd like to see is their defense has gotten a little better as the year's gone on. And can they stop this Kent State team that's just a ho-hum team? Yeah, I like, Bowling Green, that game was ugly. I think they had 3 fumbles against Western. I think they could have won by a bigger number than they did last week instead of 13-9. So at plus 2.5, yeah, I lean Bowling Green, and I like the under here a little bit. I think this might be a little bit too high. Bowling Green, been great to the under the last 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, when it comes to receiver injuries, I don't like to make too much of a big deal of them. Some teams can replace receivers that are injured, some can't. But when it comes to Dante Cephas here for Kent State, he didn't play last week, and you could see the difference without him. Big play receiver. He was with Dustin Crum last year. They missed Dustin Crum, too, because as Connor mentioned, Colin Schlee has certainly not lived up to the performance level that Dustin Crum gave this high octane, up tempo Kent offense, which last year was putting up points against everybody. This year, that's not the case. And you look at, Colin Schlee has like a 50% completion rate against Washington and Oklahoma. I kind of understand that. But then you get into MAC play and you're seeing this guy still barely complete 50%, like Miami 57% completions, 50% against Toledo for Colin Schlee. So, yeah, he is definitely struggling in the passing game. There's no question. Like I say, I think there's a winnable game here for Bowling Green to clinch bowl eligibility. Buffalo, Central Michigan. Next up here, we got Buffalo, 2-point road favorites, 54 being the total in this game. Buffalo with a rough night last week against Ohio. We'll see if they have it in them to bounce back from that defeat. When you look at the standings here in the MAC, I mean, it is really bunched up in the East. And speaking of Bowling Green, they're actually tied for first in the MAC East with Buffalo and Ohio. So that first place in that division is up for grabs. It really is a 3-team race between Ohio, Buffalo, and Bowling Green. So big game here for Buffalo to try to get back on track. And the thing is, too, now that they lost head-to-head against Ohio, Buffalo is going to have to finish ahead of Ohio in the MAC East standings if they're going to win that division and be in the MAC title game. So I think Buffalo is the better team. I could probably lean to them at less than a field goal here. They're on the road again, but Central Michigan is off a performance last week where they took advantage of a Northern Illinois team that was missing Lombardi. I don't know if that's a sure buy sign necessarily for Central Michigan. I will say this, though, in the underdog role, this team's been good. And this is a small dog role. I prefer them getting bigger points, but they have been very good in the underdog role. Richardson's capable at quarterback. Is this team, which kind of had a really rough go of it for a while, going to step up and keep it going here? Keep in mind, they've not been good at home. They are actually 0-4, Conor Mac, 0-4 against the spread at home this year. All their good success and most of their point spread success has been on the road this year as opposed to at home. I think it's a good bounce back spot for Buffalo, and I think they're the better team. Probably have a small bet on Buffalo, but I am a little weary of that success as a dog for Central Michigan. However, a lot of it's been catching more points than just the 2 points they're getting here. They've pretty much got to win the game. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I think Buffalo is a little bit better. That was a disappointing loss. I thought it was a tough situation. Now they come back, and are a couple point favorites on the road again. Snyder's been good, pretty good all year for Buffalo. I don't know what to make of Central Michigan. Like these, the win versus Northern without Lombardi, and then, they lost to Bowling Green bad. They beat Akron by 7. I thought this team would be a little bit better. They lost to Ball State 17-16. Richardson is all right at quarterback. I don't know what to make much of their defense. So I don't want really anything here. You talked about they haven't been good at home. This was just kind of, when I was looking at it last night, a pass for me all the way around. And maybe this one gets over. But I'm not so sure about that even, Ian, this total. What comes to play? Because Buffalo defense and shut down Central, or we maybe get into a little bit of a shootout and it gets over?
That's the big question. And I think I would lean over here, but That remains to be seen. A lot of turnovers. I think that, then that game still went over the total with Buffalo and Ohio last week. And the Buffalo offense, when they're rolling, like I'm not in a rush to bet their games under the total. And when you look at the series history, CMAC, we have 43-20, 34-24, 51-14. Last 3 meetings, Buffalo versus Central, all of them going over the total. So I might get there with the over as well in this game. All right, let's turn our attention to Thursday. Now, college football AAC action. Tulsa taking on Memphis. We have Memphis 6.5-point home favorites, 61 the total in this game. Man, these are 2 teams that I have been betting against most of the season more than betting on them. I've not been impressed with either. I cashed a did I cash a ticket against both of these teams? I almost took UCF, but I was worried about the status of Plumlee in that game. That's what kept me off the game. UCF still got the job done, beating Memphis 35-28. Plumlee ended up not playing in that game. It was Mikey Keene, of course, at quarterback, and he still ripped apart this Memphis defense, which tells you how bad Memphis defense has been all year. I mean, they can't get stops. They can't stop any quality offense at all. They've given up 33, 47, 38, 35 in the last 4 games. That's enough of Ryan Silverfield, all right? It's time to make a change. This program has clearly been on a steady decline ever since Mike Norvell left for Florida State. I mean, where has this program gone under Ryan Silverfield's watch? Down the shitter. That's about where it's gone, as far as I'm good. I just don't think this is a very good Memphis team. 4-5 they are on the year. Now, Tulsa's not much better. In fact, Tulsa is actually only 3-6. But I'll say this about Tulsa. I cashed with Tulane. Tulane got the job done 27-13. Tulsa showed some fight in that game. It may not look that way, but, Tulane would keep getting the lead back to double digits, and Tulsa would try to answer. And Tulsa moved the ball, and they screwed up with turnovers a couple of times. They haven't quit on the season, Tulsa, even though they're only 3-6. We'll have to see if Davis Brin is ready to return at quarterback. He was out due to injury against Tulane, and it was Braylon Braxton who was at quarterback, and he was, mediocre at best. Barely 50% completions, 13 of 25, 146. They had a hard time running the football. The good news for Tulsa here in this game is, they should be able to run the football a little bit better. And whether it's Brin with the shoulder injury, if he's able to come back, and if he isn't, Braxton a second game, you'd think he's going to be able to improve a little bit. And the secondary for Memphis blows. It's absolutely awful. They're 119th in the country. Everybody can throw on them. I'm looking for a reason to bet Tulsa here. I know they're 0-4 ATS. They've been a point spread disaster area, but Memphis hasn't been much better. Memphis has not been necessarily great in a favorites role either. Remember, 13-point home favorites. They lost to North Texas. They did cover against Temple, but they were losing at halftime in that game against Temple, and I think Temple should have covered as far as they just fell apart in the fourth quarter. So I definitely lean to the Tulsa side, and I definitely like this over. Regardless of who's at quarterback here for Tulsa, whether it's Brin or whether it's Braxton again. I don't trust either defense. So 61.5, I think we could see enough points to get over that number. What do you think here, Connor? Tulsa, Memphis.
I agree with you. Let's touch on the total here. Both these defenses are horrible. You mentioned Memphis, the pass defense, their total defense, scoring defense on the other side. Tulsa, 90th total, almost there. 118th scoring defense. So give me the over here. It'd be a lot better. Braxton was okay, but Brin's the better quarterback. He's been there a long time. Better numbers. I'd want him in this one. And I have to tell you, there is no way in hell Memphis, I'd like points. No freaking way. Even if Braxton's in, Tulsa would be the play here. And Memphis, even as a favorite, 1-6 ATS, their last 7 at home. No way. It'd be the points here, and there should be back and forth scoring, especially if Brin's in.
You know how they say when you suffer enough scars in a mediocre to disappointing season, eventually there's going to be that game where you just don't show up. Look at Memphis. They had a heartbreaker against East Carolina. They gave the game away against Houston. I'll never forget that, how they gave that game away
that was
against
pathetic.
Houston on that Friday night. They lose in overtime to East Carolina, heartbreaker. They fight a decent battle against Tulane, but fall short by 10. A heartbreaker against UCF with a backup quarterback playing for them. At some point, you let go of the rope when you've suffered all of these, excruciating, close, tough, painful defeats. So that's another reason why, geez, it's, to me, you get Tulsa or nothing. I think this could be a week where Memphis, you lose. You're right there, you lose. You're right there, you lose. You don't get stops when you need them. And the scars build up. And I worry about a no-show here for Memphis. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I worry about that with all the tough losses that keep on accumulating for this football team right now. All right, next up, we've got Georgia Southern and UL Lafayette. Next up here in this game, Sun Belt action. UL Lafayette 3-point home favorites, 59.5 the total in this one. I never thought I'd say this, but Clay Helton's doing a hell of a coaching job. I know I never thought I would say that about this guy. But let's give him some credit here with Georgia Southern. They've had a nice season so far. They were one of the few teams to beat James Madison. They beat Old Dominion. The South Alabama game was very disappointing from their standpoint. They got off to a great start, and the defense kind of caved in the second half. The South Alabama offense got it going through the air, on the ground as well, but it was especially the ground game that just destroyed Georgia Southern. Damian Webb, have a day, 4 rushing touchdowns, 247 rushing yards against Georgia Southern in that comeback win for South Alabama. So very disheartening to see that if you're Georgia Southern. Their defense could not stop the run. Their defense hasn't stopped the run all year. 127 in the country, 225 rushing yards allowed per game. That's not very good. But they're going up against a pedestrian, and I'm being kind, ULL offense. We know this is not a great offensive football team this year. They've struggled to put up points on the board consistently, especially against good defenses, but I don't know if they're a good defense, Georgia Southern. I think ULL can get some offense going. The fact they put up 17 against Troy is actually impressive because Troy's got one hell of a defense. Let's also not forget they did score 29 against Southern Miss, who's got a pretty good defense. I mean, you're seeing Ben Wooldridge and the offense start to get going a little bit for ULL, and they hung 38 against Arkansas State. I personally think Georgia Southern's defense is closer to Arkansas State caliber than Troy caliber. So I think this is a game for UL Lafayette to get their offense going a little bit. On the flip side, ULL does have the defense has been the strength of the team. There's no question about that. They're going up, though, against this up-tempo, pass-heavy Georgia Southern attack led by Van Treese, the quarterback transfer from Buffalo. They've been putting up points every week, regardless of who they've played. Coastal, Georgia State, James Madison, they put 45 on the board against a pretty good team. Very good ODU defense, or at least a decent ODU defense, 28 points and then 31. So I don't know. To me, with this total now, 59.5, that's high for ULL, but it's very low for Georgia Southern, a total in the 50s, because Georgia Southern has certainly been an over machine here for the majority in recent weeks. I think this could be an over spot here just because I think this is a week for ULL offensively to get things going a bit. After 2 straight losses, Troy and Southern Miss. Remember, the Southern Miss, there was a lot of turnovers in that game for ULL. They outgained Southern Miss by 100. I think back home they can bounce back. Keep in mind, on their home field this year, destroyed Eastern Michigan. They almost beat South Alabama, a very good South Alabama team at home, lost by 3, and then they beat up Arkansas State at home. So on this Ragin' Cajun field, they've played better football. I would lean to them as a field goal home favorite here in this game. What do you think, Conor Mac, Georgia Southern, ULL?
Yeah, I'd lean to them a little bit, but I don't know if I get involved in this.
Certainly the better defense, ULL. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're at home. This is where you want them. Man, Georgia Southern broke it for me. I had the 3.5, and I had some money line there. No points in the fourth, and gave up 2 touchdowns to lose it, and we were winning by 7. So that was heartbreak. The defense collapsed, and then they couldn't score. You mentioned they can run it. Van Treese has been very, very good for them. They've been able to put up yards, and they should here. Even Louisiana's a pretty good defense. They still should be able to move it, but so will the Cajuns, I think, in this one. But the total, is this just too high? I don't know, because I think this could just get over back and forth, or this could stay under. I'm gonna look at this one a little bit the next couple of days where I want to make a move. But yeah, I like the Cajuns at home. I don't love the hook here. It's like 3.5 a lot of places now. There's still some 3s. So yeah, I think I'm going to be off the side.
All right. Next up here as we go to Friday night, AAC matchup, pretty good one. East Carolina, Cincinnati. We got the Bearcats, 5.5 point home favorites, 52.5 the total in this game. Cincinnati off a 20-10. Well, workmanlike win. I wouldn't say it was overly impressive, but they got the job done, bouncing back from that tough loss on the road against Central Florida the week before. Ben Bryant in the passing game, he's been serviceable, solid. He hasn't been explosive with the passing game, but he's done enough. He had a good game against Navy, but again, Navy's always had a weak secondary. They did struggle to run the football, or at least I thought they could have run the football a little bit better than they did in that game. We'll see if that carries over here against East Carolina, who are coming off a bye week following that big win on the road against BYU 27-24. It's a team that's won 3 in a row. Memphis, UCF, and BYU entering this game off a bye week. Certainly from a spot perspective, lines up very nicely for East Carolina. They're catching points. I like them in the underdog role. Look what they've done as dogs lately. 3-point dogs at BYU win outright. 5.5-point dogs at home against UCF win outright. You know, they're on the road this time, and we did see them lose 24-9 on the road to Tulane. And, you know, that probably is the best team they've played on the road. I think Tulane's better than BYU at this stage of the season, and they did lose that one decisively, and Holton Ahlers in the offense couldn't get anything going. And that's always a concern when you're playing a pretty solid Cincy defense. But Cincinnati's been a bit of an overvalued commodity. They failed to cover in 4 straight. They let SMU right back into the game. They were life and death at home on this field to beat South Florida 28-24 last month. Again, the Navy game, they don't sniff a point spread cover, and plus the loss to UCF. I definitely think I'll be looking to be on ECU here, plus the points. My one little fear is that Holton Ahlers has done nothing against this defense. All right, 55-17 Cincinnati, 35-13 Cincinnati in each of the last 2 seasons in the head-to-head matchup. But I don't know if Cincinnati's that kind of Cincinnati that they were the last 2 years. So off a bye, extra time for Mike Houston to prepare. I'm still going to look at the Pirates here, plus the points. What do you think, Connor?
I think this is the year that they, can get, maybe even beat Cincinnati. You mentioned they lost to UCF.
Oh, there's one thing I got to throw out there, Conor Mac, because I've seen this team play a lot. It's worth mentioning. The penalties. This team is taking way too many penalties, Cincinnati. It's got to be driving Luke Fickell nuts. That it's what lets SMU get back into the game. Some of those costly penalties they had against UCF cost them that game. That shit's got to be rectified. They're not a very disciplined football team. That's been an issue with the Bearcats.
And that's been strange for the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years for a Luke Fickell team. And that, cause yeah, I saw some of the game. That was just workmanlike. I thought it was ugly. The Navy. I'm glad Navy covered. I had them, but man, 2010. Oof, it's ugly. And it seems like the offense is kind of slowing down for Cincinnati. They were scoring early. Defense was a little bit leaky. The big key, I think, maybe is that bye, because the best game, the BYU one was good. BYU slipping a little bit in Provo. But that one game against Tulane on the road, you mentioned, the best team they probably played, they kind of got shut down. I lean under here. I think both these teams are playing well. Defense can come up big. And it's all up to Ahlers. In the years past, he can have these solid games and he can have these shitty ones. Mitchell should be able to run it. And I think, though, with that Cincinnati secondary that slipped a little bit, he can get it done. So I'm with you here. I lean under and I lean the points right now with East Carolina.
All right, we go to the Pac-12. This is also on Friday night, Colorado and USC. We've got the Trojans here laying 34.5, 66 being the total here in Boulder in this game. Again, we mentioned this, that the big showdown with UCLA is coming up following this game for USC. So right away, there's not a spot I'm looking to lay 34. Now, can I take Colorado? No, absolutely not. I mean, we just saw what happened with Colorado last. In fact, I laid it, Connor. I laid the 31 on the road with Oregon last week and 49-10. I just said, you know what?
Oregon total got there.
Yeah.
All right. Barely. They got there. Yeah.
It did. I said, they're so explosive. They'll find a way, I think, to win by 35 plus. And sure enough, they did. And that's certainly a possibility here for USC, because that offense with Caleb Williams and company, they didn't even have Addison, the Biletnikoff winner from last year. He didn't play against Cal. And yet that offense was still motoring up and down the field last week against the Golden Bears. So it's a dynamic offense. They've got playmakers. They've got a great offensive line. Travis Dye, the transfer from Oregon's been great running the football. Colorado ain't stopping USC. But USC has been sleepwalking defensively now multiple weeks in a row, and that's why Cal covered. I mean, they were up big and they fell asleep, and Cal got that game down to 6 points at the end, and USC had to hang on 41-35. They gave up 37 to Arizona the week before that, 43 to Utah. Everybody on Twitter saying, oh, USC playoff caliber my ass. Maybe a playoff caliber offense, not a playoff caliber defense right now. I mean, they're giving up big points weekly. So I would probably rather play the total in this game than the side, because I don't want to take Colorado. I just don't trust them enough. And I don't think they're going to USC may not punt in this game against Colorado. But I think with USC kind of sleepwalking defensively, the big showdown with UCLA next week, I think even JT Shrout or whoever's at quarterback for Colorado, they can put some points. Give me 14, give me 17, hell, maybe even 20, 21 with what USC's been giving up lately. We can get 21, maybe 17, 21 out of Colorado. You know, if we get that, we're going to get 45, 48 at least, I think, out of USC in this game, and we're going to get this game up and over the total. So I'd rather have the over than either side here in this game. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to mess with this game at all. You mentioned with the big game ahead, USC could just, they're up by, 40, and then that last touchdown, they don't cover. I mean, I'm sure their team total is going to be same as Oregon's, whatever, 47.5. I don't even know, right around that number, and probably will get it if you want to look at that. Yeah, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't know what the defense is doing, because that Cal offense isn't very good with Plummer, and just fourth quarter just fell asleep, just like didn't give a shit. And I mean, they haven't been very good. I keep thinking, you mentioned SC, like, what if this team played Georgia? Or you mean this defense is so bad? Like, what would happen in a game like that?
They have no shot against Georgia, especially if Georgia plays the way they did against Tennessee. Good luck.
Even, other teams in the SC. Tennessee, they would get waxed. So good luck. Have a good win against Colorado. But, nothing here.
Yeah. And by the way, that pretty much is going to be the game that decides who plays Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, that USC-UCLA game. That should be a great game. I'm looking forward to that, and certainly lots on the line when those two LA schools go off head-to-head next week. Fresno State, UNLV next up. We've got Fresno, 10-point road favorites in this game, and the total in this one in the high 50s, 58.5. I always said if we get that early season Hawaii, that was the one concern I had when I took them plus the points against Fresno, and wouldn't you know it, we got early season Hawaii. It looked like that Hawaii team that was just totally outclassed, 55-13, could not stop Fresno whatsoever. Hawaii was making some strides, but look, I mean, that's now with Jake Haener back against San Diego State, Hawaii. And look, San Diego State, I think it took him a half to get rolling. Well, he was rolling start to finish against Hawaii. This Fresno State team now, to me, looks like a buy sign, bet on team down the stretch moving forward. And UNLV, they did get the cover, for their backers against San Diego State, but a 14-10 loss to the San Diego State Aztecs. Brumfield was shaky in his return from injury, 17-27, 207, 2 interceptions, 115 rushing yards from Robbins at running back. The Fresno defense at times has had some leaks with the ground game. We'll see if the UNLV can take advantage of that here, but they are giving up 162 rushing yards per game on the ground, Fresno. Can Robbins take advantage of that? We'll see, but I'm just not in a rush to step in front of Fresno. I haven't decided if I'm going to lay this many points with Fresno State, but you look at the difference, it's night and day. Just getting Jake Haener back, it's transformed them into, once again, a very dangerous team in the Mountain West. So this, to me, would be probably maybe a Fresno team total over if you don't like laying the points, but I'd lean in that direction in this game. What do you think, Con?
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to get with UNLV. They covered there. They didn't really have any yards. They had the turnovers. And we know San Diego State doesn't really have an offense, because we were talking about that Rebel defense off the bye, if they could do anything. I think this one, there's points scored. I think with Haener back, I think they scored. The problem is you want to lay 10 on the road. UNLV been a lot better, especially at home. But I like what I've seen out of Fresno. You mentioned this could be the big push. He's back. He's healthy. Looks good. If Fresno defense start playing better, and they just, shredded Hawaii, almost 600 yards, no turnovers. If they do that again, they cover against UNLV. Take care of the ball, that shit. UNLV has turnovers. They'll cover this 10. But if they don't, maybe UNLV could be the home dog here. catching 10.
All right, next up here, we've got Saturday action. We're moving over to Saturday now, and we start with a very intriguing game after the win of the season, definitely, for LSU, and an incredible game against Alabama. Brutal beat, though, if you had the under. I mean, that was definitely a game that was way under the total. Most of the game gets blown up by overtime. LSU and Arkansas here on Saturday. We've got certainly an interesting matchup here with these two teams. How does LSU respond after that huge victory against Alabama last week? That's going to be interesting to see. But right now we've got our LSU around 3.5-point road favorites here, 62 being the total in this game. This is definitely buyer beware laying points on the road with LSU after the kind of victory they just notched. Like, they look like they're rounding into form. Let's give them that. They're playing their best football of the season. They've improved to 7-2. I remember seeing this team earlier in the year when they got whipped, and I mean whipped, at home by Tennessee, and I'm like, man, this team's not going to beat anybody good. But sure enough, since then, they're 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. They go on the road to the Swamp in Gainesville, beat Florida by 10, beat Ole Miss 45-20, dominate the Rebels, who are a pretty solid team, and then, of course, the big win against Alabama, 32-31. Jaden Daniels, when they got him from Arizona State, I said, this is a guy that can play. Is it going to mesh well for him at LSU? And early in the season, all he could do was run the football. There was no passing game to be had. Well, now he's running the football still, and that's the dangerous part of his game. But his passing ability has really gotten better. And he didn't have to throw it a ton against Alabama, but 182 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 22 of 32, a good completion rate. You know, the passing game's gotten better here for him going into this game against Arkansas, but it does have that really worrisome. I mean, they were celebrating big time, as you would expect. Night win in Baton Rouge, Alabama. Brian Kelly with his crocodile tears in the post-game interviews and saying, oh, it's a great moment, and getting all weepy at the end. It was such a big win. I mean, it's just got all the makings of, can they focus, just get themselves tunnel vision, just lock back in and focus on Arkansas? Because, look, Arkansas is coming off a 21-19 loss against Liberty. They have not been the team we expected this season. But they are, you get Arkansas on their best day, you get LSU on their worst day in a potential letdown situation after a huge win against Alabama. There is a pathway for Arkansas to win this game. I just don't know if the Arkansas defense is in a position where they're going to be able to contain LSU's offense, which keeps getting better. All that being said, Arkansas is better against the run, and much better against the run than they are against the pass, and LSU is still more of a run-heavy offense. I mean, the run is where they do more of their damage, so it's not the worst matchup for Arkansas, and they get LSU in a potential dangerous spot. I don't know if I'll bet the game, Connor, but I will tell you right now, flat out, it'd be the Razorbacks plus the points for me if I'm getting involved in this one. I don't have that full confidence level in LSU withstanding the prosperity of a huge win last week against Alabama. What do you think here, Conor Mac?
I got to get a couple people that hit me up. College basketball will be on later, 5 Eastern. Yeah. Game tipping off 10 minutes, Pacific, Stanford. I'm on this under 135.5. I don't know if you're on anything there, Ian. I just want to get that out there.
I passed on that game, but yeah, there's reasons to like that game under the total. So good luck with that. I agree.
Yeah, the big win by LSU, huge. I loved it. I didn't think they should have been 13, but I didn't think they'd win either. I want to get to Arkansas real quick because you mentioned the hangover. They were pathetic. Pittman even said, we didn't come prepared that first half. We just walked through everything. He said Jefferson's super banged up. We know he's dealing with a bunch of stuff, just kind of getting through. And that was ugly. I think this is a good spot for them to bounce back. And this won't be easy for LSU. I mean, I do like the play. Like you mentioned, the Florida win. And yeah, Daniels, it's just night and day. It's just like the progression he's made from week to week with LSU. But this will be tough for them. If they go on the road here and win by a touchdown, would be big. But right now, I'd lean to the points here. That game did not get over, and I think it's because of Arkansas just being flat as all hell. Couldn't score in the first half. But in this one, I'd lean over with these two teams.
Yeah, that is true. There's no doubt KJ Jefferson, and you saw it in the Liberty game, and I was on Liberty plus the point. I split that game, but I did have the over in that game. It never came close, but I did have Liberty plus the points, and you're right, Jefferson was laboring much of that game. 2 interceptions, 23 of 36. You're right. That's what you get for scheduling a non-conference game right in the middle of SEC season. I don't get why teams do this. Just in the middle of SEC season, here, we'll plunk a non-conference game down there for you against Liberty.
Don't have it like a Liberty.
Yeah.
Make it like a Arkansas State or some team that maybe you think it can be an easy win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the timing of it stinks. I mean, once you get into conference play, stay in conference play. I never understand why they do this sometimes, but they paid the price for it. All right, Purdue and Illinois, Big Ten action. Next up, we've got certainly in this one an interesting game in the Big Ten. Illinois 6.5-point home favorites, 45.5. The total is getting bet down, it looks like, as we speak. I mean, just when we get all excited, right? Just when we get all, very, very excited about the way things are progressing here for Illinois, they end up losing 23-15 to Michigan State at home on Saturday. So there's shades of old Brett Bielema right there, the old Brett Bielema, where they have this just inexplicable loss when things are just going so well. And really, to be honest with you, this team, when you look at it, they have themselves to blame here. Their fumbles were an issue. They have missed some opportunities. They left points on the board. They left a lot of points on the board. They've went for it on fourth down multiple times, didn't get it. I mean, they should have won that game at the very least. I mean, the yardage was over 400 for Illinois and less than 300 for Michigan State. So it was a very phony, misleading score if you're Michigan State. But a win's a win, and a loss is a loss. And this is a tough loss for Illinois because, they're definitely still – they're in a good spot still. They could still win the Big Ten West Division. It's not like that loss crippled them by any stretch. They're still 4-2 in the conference, and they're still one game ahead of everybody. That logjam of teams that are 3-3, Iowa, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Minnesota. Illinois is still one game ahead of all of them, but it was a setback you didn't want to have, especially when you've got a tough schedule still to come. You got to play at Michigan next week. This game, even against struggling Purdue, is never going to be an easy game, although you got to wonder where Purdue is at offensively. I mean, 24-3 against Iowa in their last game, not good. Aiden O'Connell struggled, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It was a very poor game on his part. And this is another guy you have to ask, was he 100% healthy in that game against Iowa? But, it's definitely, I would think, an Illinois team after a loss, maybe a wake-up call. That they bounce back here in this game. It was just shocking, too, that they lost to Michigan State at home. They're back home here. They still have a good home record this year, 5-1 straight up, 4-2 against the spread. I think if I had to, I'd lay the points, but I don't know if I will yet. What do you think, Conor Mac?
You hit it, because right when that game, watching it and seeing it going for it, I'm like, man, they've outgained them, all this stuff. And you mentioned there was just, that one fumble. That was bad, but that was it. You mentioned the missed field goals, going for it on fourth down multiple times because, they outgained them by over 150 yards in that game. So we talked about on Saturday, you met Bielema laying points. He gets all, huge favorite. Don't back this guy. He's going to shit on you. And he did. So I'm glad I stayed off there. But Purdue on the other side. What's with O'Connell? Is he really hurt? He looks awful. I mean, he was 20 of 43. Talking about no TDs, 2 picks. They couldn't do anything. They make this Iowa offense look good. This is one, man, it's tough. If this touches 7, can I even look at Purdue now? Can I back them? Is O'Connell all right? Because when he's going, I think he's a pretty solid quarterback in college football. And then the Purdue defense is kind of slipping as well. So I'm going to wait on this one a little bit more a week. I do have to say, Illinois game, this number, under. They can get into just a slow style game. So at 45.5, take the under here, early game.
Yeah, we don't have many pieces of evidence of Illinois, how they respond off a loss. But remember, they lost to Indiana on the road, and then they played Virginia at home, and they waxed Virginia and dominated that game start to finish. So that's why I have the faith that Illinois can bounce back. And they know they're still first in the Big Ten West. There's no reason to panic or fall apart because you lost that game against Michigan. And you didn't play that bad. You just, you didn't capitalize on your drives and you left points on the board. That was the difference in the game. So I think they can bounce back. We'll see. I would lean to lay in that with the Illini there. Indiana, Ohio State. We've got Ohio State. Huge number here. 57.5 being the total in this game. This is a concern right now for Ohio State, is that they are not putting 60 minutes of football together at times lately. I mean, you look at that Northwestern game, go through the motions. They didn't cover against Penn State the week before that. I mean, it is a huge tax to bet on Ohio State right now. And it's a tax that I don't know if I'm willing to bet here. That being said, we're waiting for Indiana to show. And if Indiana can't show up against Penn State at home in Bloomington off a bye week, and you still get absolutely destroyed, 45-14, you get outgained by 287 yards, has this team tapped out? Have they just said, fuck it, our season's over. We're not going to give two shits. We're just going to mail it in Saturdays, the rest of the season for the Indiana. Like, their defense can't stop anybody. The offense has fallen apart here the last few games. Connor Bazelak's play has been less than inspiring. And then Jack Tuttle had to start because Bazelak was out last week against Penn State. He goes 9-12, 82 yards. And then they end up going to Dexter Williams. He's no good. Brendan Sorsby comes into the game at quarterback. He can't play either. I mean, it's just all kinds of issues right now for Indiana. So pass for me. I'm not laying this many points with an Ohio State team that was sleepwalking much of the day against Northwestern last week. But can you even back Indiana right now with what they've shown you? I don't think so. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, no, but goddamn, 40 points here. It starts to get my interest, but I don't even know if I could take them. They've just been that bad. But maybe, Penn State won 45-14. Could there be some touchdown? Because Ohio State
54-7 last year, Ohio State over Indiana.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there's always that. And what are you going to get the Ohio State team that can do that? Can just, all four quarters, just really probably three, and that fourth quarter was nothing. So it's really 3.5. They can get to the 50s. Indiana just seems to be mailing in, like you talked about. And the quarterback play has just been inconsistent. I want nothing in this one. If you're Ohio State and want to bet on this game, I don't know. Yeah, you got to get into team total or first half if you're into this type of shit. But it's a pass for me.
One thing that I want to piece of advice from all my years doing this now, when you see in November college football, final month, final weeks of the season, teams that are showing signs of quit, don't try to make excuses or find reasons to back these teams that are showing signs of quit. Because a lot of times they pack it. Look at Florida International last year. They showed signs of quit all last year, and you just made money fading them week after week after week after week. Are we getting to that point right now with Indiana? The problem is Ohio State is not the team I want to fade them with, because there's just no value at all with the Buckeyes. Maybe next week we'll fade Indiana if they're a no-show again this week. But again, no bargains with the Buckeyes. Oklahoma, West Virginia next up now. Big 12 game here in this one. We've got Oklahoma 8-point road favorites, 65.5, 66 being the total in this game. A great game down to the wire. Oklahoma, Baylor. Baylor gets the 38-35 win. Not back on track as Brent Venables' defense here at Oklahoma, because they had the one good game against what we know is not a great Iowa State offense. And other than that, they've been, gashed every other game, 38, 42, 49, 55, 41. You just can't lay points with Oklahoma on the road. I'm not going to do that here with that defense. But West Virginia is kind of in a tailspin themselves, 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread. I took them as a dog last week, and they got bit for it, 31-14. They lose to Iowa State. But Iowa State does have a solid defense. That's the one thing. Like, Iowa State's obviously struggled, but the one thing they do have is a capable defense. You got to think JT Daniels gets something going here. I mean, it's obviously the Texas Tech game. I don't know how they only scored 10 last week, only 14. JT Daniels, by the way, Garrett Green finished that game for West Virginia. Neil Brown, there's people saying that, if things don't get better here these last few weeks, he may be out, which is shocking. And I thought this was a good hire when it happened, but you're right. You're not really seeing West Virginia take that next step the way we thought. I mean, here they are sitting 3-6, Conor Mac. They got to win out just to get to a bowl game now. That's where we're at with West Virginia. I don't know if I could trust either side. I'm not laying 8 with Oklahoma on the road with that defense. I think West Virginia can take advantage of it, but their defense is so bad too. I could see Dylan Gabriel going up and down the field with that Oklahoma offense. I'd look to the total and the over rather than either side. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, because Oklahoma's defense that bad, but West Virginia, I don't even know. Did they get 200 total yards? Just under or just above? I'd have to double check. They were 2 or 12 on third downs when I was going through all this stuff. Just awful. You mentioned Daniels really play. There's one spot to play West Virginia is at home. So you mentioned it. How bad they've been. This is like a must kind of win, and you're getting 8 points. I think it's them or just stay off because me. No way I'm taking Oklahoma. No fucking way. Gabriel, that was a good back and forth. Baylor got it done and the over. I was on both those in that game. He had a couple interceptions that were bad there, and the defense gave it up in the end to Baylor. So it's just all of a sudden this West Virginia offense that was scoring early, Ian's not scoring, lately. You just went through the scores. So if they can score here, I think they can be in it. But I don't know in the end if I get involved, but I'd lean to the points.
All right, we go to the SEC, Missouri, Tennessee. Tennessee, 21-point home favorites, 21.5, I believe, in some spots as well here. 57 the total in this game. What are we going to get from Tennessee? That was humbling. They thought they were good enough to, at the very least, compete with Georgia. Maybe not win the game because it was, look, all their big wins were at home, Kentucky and Alabama. Those 2 wins for Tennessee were at home, but they thought they were good enough to compete at least. And it looked like men against boys. I mean, it was just all Georgia. In fact, the final score was a little bit flattering. I think Georgia kind of, took their foot off the gas with the lead, the comfortable lead in the fourth quarter, 27-13, but it was all Georgia. They ended up with 387 total yards, holding this Tennessee offense, which runs snaps the football and the number of plays they run every game to less than 300 total yards. Tells you how damn good Georgia's defense played last week. It was absolutely a terrific performance, no question. I don't know what you get from Tennessee. The Tennessee's A game could, if they're fired up, they play their A game here, they could roll Missouri. But Missouri's been the epitome of a tough out. And even though I lost with Missouri in a pick'em last week against Kentucky, they lost by 4. They were down much early in that game, but they kept battling back and, took that game down to the wire, fell short. But you look at them in SEC play, 4-point loss to Kentucky, 7-point loss to Florida, 4-point loss at home to Georgia. Well, there's not much evidence here in conference play of them getting blown out here. And the defense has improved quite a bit for Missouri. Now, their offense is definitely a sore spot. They have not had a very good offensive football team this year compared to years past. Brady Cook's been kind of mediocre at the quarterback spot. In and out they've been of being able to run the football throughout the course of the season. But there's a lot of points for a Tennessee team that I don't exactly know how they're going to respond after just getting kind of humbled by Georgia last week and suffering that first loss of the season. And that's another angle I don't like, Conor Mac. We saw it with Syracuse against Notre Dame after they lost their first game against Clemson. The first loss for these teams this late in the season. Sometimes it's a bubble burst and you get them kind of reeling a little bit the next week. So I haven't decided if I'm going to take Missouri, but it's the only way I would bet it sidewise. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, Tennessee, I wasn't kicking myself that I bet Georgia, but that's what I thought could happen in that game, and it did. Watching it, this is a ton of points. There's no way I can take Tennessee here. I got to look the other way with Missouri. As long as the Tennessee defense has been better this year. That's why they've been better. I know that offense gets a lot of the credit, but you talked about Cook. They just had a hard time scoring, and that was the trouble. I think why they didn't win the game against Kentucky, but I'm glad that stayed under. One more touchdown and would have went over. So I was happy with that in the Missouri-Kentucky game. But I think they get a couple touchdowns here. Let's say even, Tennessee scores 30, 28. I think they cover here. Too many. 3 touchdowns, way too many. Give me the points with Missouri.
Yeah, a little dubious spot for tennis. This is going to tell us a lot. I mean, they should be looking at this season still as we've still got, lots at stake here. When you look at the standings right now, I mean, 4-1 in the conference. Obviously, the East is probably going to go to Georgia now, you would think. So that's the big concern is they're not even going to be able to go to the SEC championship game. They've got to hope they get in as like one of a wild card top 4 in the playoff. How much weight too? What's also something to consider when it comes to Tennessee's still playoff hopes, which are flickering now after that loss. The Alabama win has been devalued by Alabama losing again to LSU on Saturday. So that's now Tennessee's in that position where the playoffs are very much shaky ground.
Yeah. What happens too? What if they lose again That last spot will go to a 2-loss SEC team, I think. I mean, especially if you have both Ohio State and Michigan in. I mean, a Pac-12 one-loss team be there. So it'll be interesting. You mentioned that the 3 and 4 spot, the 4 spot there.
All right, Notre Dame and Navy next up here. We've got Notre Dame off of just a shock. Not shocking they beat Clemson. It's shocking that they beat down Clemson. I mean, it was just non-competitive all over them. Terrible game from the Clemson offense, a 35-14 dominant blowout win for Notre Dame. Now they go to Annapolis, Maryland, taking on Navy, and they're laying a big number here in this one, 17. The total right now sitting at around 42.5 in this game. I mean, this is your classic spot probably to go against Notre Dame. I mean, after that win against Clemson, they are coming in off 2 straight quality performances, but Syracuse and Clemson winning by double digits. Navy's one of those teams that nothing they do looks impressive, but they've hung around. They've been the epitome of a team that has hung around really ever since the loss against Memphis. You trace their schedule back to September 24th. They beat East Carolina as underdogs. 3-point loss to a good Air Force team. Beat up Tulsa 53-21. Hang tough against SMU. They lose 40-34 on the road. Houston 38-20. That was a bad game, which was surprising to see them play that poorly. But again, 18-point loss. Then they beat Temple 27-20 in overtime, and they hang tough at Cincinnati last week. 18.5-point dogs. They lose by 10. And the one thing for Notre Dame is we'll see how they fare here against this triple option offense. On paper, the Notre Dame defense is not bad against the run, and that you would think bodes well here for them against Navy. And they have done a good job head-to-head the last 3 times they played Navy, especially the last 2, 52-20, 34-6. They've been beat downs in favor of Notre Dame, but boy, I'm telling you what, this is not a Notre Dame spot, not after the kind of win they had last week against Clemson. Now you got to go on the road as well for this game. So the Navy or pass for me early in the week. What do you think, Connor?
Me too. Just off the big win and how they did it. They just ran down Clemson's throat. Pine didn't do much. He didn't have to do much. And Clemson was just awful. We thought they were flawed. But man, they looked bad in this one. You touched on the rivalry here. To me, in the last few, Notre Dame's blown them out. But it either seems like Navy can win this, or it's like a 3-point game, or they get blown out. So I think that's what it is here. Maybe look Navy early. Is Notre Dame going to be flat here early on?
I agree with that.
And
then they wake up in the second half. And remember the pace. Navy's going to go ultra slow. Notre Dame doesn't push pace on offense.
Oh, they're both going to go snail.
Slow. Yeah, that's what makes the points. That's a large number to overcome if you're Notre Dame, 17.
Agree. I lean the points as well. Maybe look first half, like I was mentioning too. Yep.
All right, Central Florida and Tulane next up here. We've got this should be a good one in the AAC. I mean, after Cincinnati, these are 2 of the top teams in this conference. It's time we talk Tulane as being one of the absolute best teams in the AAC. Tulane 2-point home favorites, 53 the total. Will Reese Plumlee come back for UCF? We'll see. He didn't play last week, obviously, in the game against Memphis. They didn't need him because Memphis is that bad on defense. They're probably going to need him here because Tulane's a lot better than Memphis, and we'll see if he's able to come back. I'm not betting against Tulane, period. They have been money machines for me week in and week out, just riding the wave, the green wave, if you will, no pun intended. Michael Pratt and the offense are very good. They're balanced. Tajay Spears running the ball, good receiving core, good O-line, and a good defense. I mean, that's been something to see this year, too. They're a very good defense. They're a good situational defense. They do give up yards sometimes, Tulane, but when it comes time to shut you down in the red zone and keep you out of the end zone, they're doing a great job. 4th down defense has been outstanding. There were all kinds of situations where Tulsa was going for it on 4th down last week, and Tulane's stopping them on 4th down. So this is going to be tough. UCF now on the road where they're a little bit more susceptible, if you will. I ain't going against Tulane, man. They're a really good team. They've been cash cows every single week, less than a field goal. We don't even know if Plumlee's going to play Tulane or pass for me. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, that's a big thing if he plays, or not. But if he's in, doesn't matter to me. UCF on the road, I've already seen it. That was nothing. That wasn't a good team they played. They lost to East Carolina. I saw it 34-13. And this team's better at Tulane with a better defense. Wrong team's favored here. as well. I think this should be flipped at
Oh,
least.
Tulane's
So
favored. They are favored
there's
to like
favorite.
2.5.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I'm reading it off here. The 2. I thought it was 2 UCF. Sorry.
But it's short. It's less
Um,
than a field goal, which is key. Yeah.
they cover. Yeah, they're the right team favored. They win here. Better defense, and they've continually got it done all year long. UCF away from home, not the same. So take Tulane.
All right, Maryland, Penn State. Next up, back to the Big Ten we go. In this one, we've got Penn State currently 10.5-point home favorites, 58 the total in this one. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I thought Penn State would be a little vulnerable after the loss to Ohio State, 2 losses. They really can't do anything in terms of winning the Big Ten anymore. And I was worried what kind of now it might just have been Indiana's that pathetic, and maybe we shouldn't put too much into that 45-14 beatdown over the Hoosiers because they really are pathetic right now, Indiana. How will they fare here against Maryland? Maryland's been one of those teams that at times they've given Penn State some fits. I remember a couple of years ago they beat up Penn State pretty good. Last year, that game was pretty close for a while, and then Penn State pulled away late. But I'll tell you what, that was very disappointing for me from little Tua and Talia Tagovailoa in the offense against Wisconsin off a bye week, getting him back. And he struggled, 10 of 23, 77 passing yards for the entire game. Couldn't run the football. That's concerning. 0-4 ATS now the last 4 games for Maryland. They barely beat a bad Indiana team by 5 and didn't cover on the road in that game. They barely beat a bad Northwestern team. You know what I mean? They're taking a step up in class here. Say what you will about Penn State, the disappointment of Ohio State. They beat a bad football team last week big time, and I haven't seen enough out of little Tua and just Maryland in general against some of the better, the upper half of the Big Ten. They have not played well against outside of the Michigan game. That's the one time, they were right in the game and very competitive. But I don't know. Lately, they're only playing okay against the bad teams and barely getting by those bad teams as well. So it's a tough game because I want to kind of take the points with Maryland, but I don't know if I trust them enough to pull the trigger. What do you think, C-Mac?
I agree. I don't know if I can trust them. You mentioned last year was close in College Park, and the year before that, and the year before, I remember Penn State blowing them out, pretty bad. They're at home. You know me, James Franklin. I'm not laying 10 here with this guy. No way. Maryland's defense isn't very good, but I think get that offense going. I think they can score here. Turnovers, just keep that down. I think they go back and forth. Give me the over. This is too light. Over in the high 50s here.
I think so too. I think Wisconsin. I think in that game on the road. I think this one here against Penn State's defense. I think they can move the ball a little bit here, Maryland, and I think Penn State will have their way offensively.
Yeah, I think Penn State can get in the 30s, and I think Maryland, gets 20. I think we get over.
Clifford's good against weaker defenses. Maryland's that, and that Singleton kid for Penn State can really run the football as well. So definitely, I think they're going to have the ability to put up some points here. All right, ACC, Conor Mac, Louisville and Clemson. What do we get from Clemson now after a humbling? That's an eye opener, losing that kind of game last week to Notre Dame. Let's see if there's a response from Dabo's crew here as they take on Louisville. Clemson 7-point home favorites, 51.5 being the total in this game. I got to give Louisville some credit for one thing. I thought that was a potential flat spot. You're playing a non-conference game. You're playing James Madison in the middle of ACC season. But unlike Arkansas against Liberty, they were not flat. Louisville was ready, and they won and covered against James Madison, much to my chagrin, as I really liked James Madison in that game. Todd Centeio did play, but it was Todd Centeio in body only, not mind, not ability, because he was, quite frankly, piss poor in that game. I don't even know if he should have played. He looked like a quarterback that was still ailing. That's how bad he played against Louisville. But nevertheless, you give Louisville credit. No look ahead, no flat spot. And now here they are against this Clemson team. I'm not laying 7 with Clemson. I'm worried now officially. That's the kind of game where, now that you lost that game, Clemson, I know it's only your first loss of the season. You shouldn't panic over it. But at the same time, it's kind of an unimpressive 8-0. Wake Forest has fallen apart. What was that? Their best win? And it's been not the toughest schedule so far for Clemson this year. Syracuse, their best win, and they barely were life and death to win that game. So there's definitely some issues right now with Clemson now sitting with their first loss of the year. Still 6-0 in ACC play, and they're probably still going to be in the ACC championship game, so they can still play that. But obviously now you got to think, forget about it when it comes to the playoff now after that loss against Notre Dame. So, Clemson, I don't think they've been a playoff caliber team the last year or two like they've been in years past. Maybe I think internally, though, Dabo has those kids always thinking we should be in the college football playoff, and now there's a damn good chance they're not in it. What's the response going to be from these Clemson players? Are they still locked in? Are they still practicing hard? Are they still doing the game prep and doing all the right things to make sure you're ready to play your best? Or are they going to start going through the motions and start to get a little, deflated a little bit after that loss last week? It's a big question here. So I'm passing the game. I don't think I will be involved in it. But I'm not really rushing to get back behind Clemson after that debacle against Notre Dame. And then now, who's going to play quarterback? DJU was pulled again last week. He goes to Klubnik. Klubnik comes in, throws the first pass as an interception. So Dabo's backed himself into a corner here. I don't think the coordinators he has right now are very good or as good as he's had in the past. He had Chad Morris, he had Elliott, he had Venables, and all these coordinators, they've left him for coaching jobs. And maybe I don't think their prep for games is as good as it used to be either. And I don't think they're quite the quarterback play's not been as good since Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and some of those other quarterbacks were there. The receiving, where's the speed at wide receiver? I mean, it's a weak receiving core if you ask me too.
No playmakers.
Tons of issues right now. I ain't laying 7. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm like rushing to lay 7. I always like Clemson better at home. Where they haven't lost, like I talk about, 6 years or something like that. But they got to, cover by margin here, a touchdown, which I don't know what could be done. The biggest, craziest thing is, what is this defense going to do? That, everyone talked about this top 5 D line, all this stuff, got shredded. Notre Dame Drew Pine, there was nothing special with that. It was handed off, and they ripped for like 260 something.
It was the 2 running backs for Notre Dame that killed them. Yep.
Yeah, just ran all over him. And that Clemson offense isn't anything crazy. So Louisville's been better. The turnover game versus Wake took care of business for JMU. Cunningham, what do? They want to run it. I think this is going to be a close game. Yeah, if I were to bet it. I don't know if I'm going to get involved. But right now, I lean Louisville. Playing good football. You know what this has been, though, with me, Ian? As soon as I want to lean Louisville, they'll shit the bed here. And they're going to lose by 20. So that's why I don't know if I'm going to get involved here.
And I still have that Wake Forest game in the back of my mind where they won that game in blowout fashion, not because they were great. It's because Wake couldn't hang on to the football. I mean, the turnovers were endless in that game. I don't want to give Louisville too much credit. I'm worried. Yeah, I need to see Louisville compete with a team like Clemson first. You look at head-to-head. It was close last year at Louisville, but still 30-24. At Clemson, the last 2 meetings, 45-10, 47-21 in favor of Clemson. So Louisville's been blown out here in Death Valley. Let's see what happens on Saturday. Alabama, Ole Miss. Alabama, 11.5-point road favorite, 63.5 the total in this one. This is the game where I worry that Alabama realizes, whoa, I mean, our season's kind of unraveling now. 2 losses. Now our playoff hopes are kind of on shaky ground. I worry about where this team is going to be at mentally for this game, but at the same time, you want to bet against that Nick Saban off a loss track record? I don't. It has been flat out dominant. I think incredible, the numbers, straight up and ATS for Nick Saban off a loss. And we already saw it after Tennessee. What happened? Destroyed Mississippi State the next week. It's just too strong of a trend and track record. Nick Saban, Alabama teams off a loss have been money. And yeah, there's some worries about where they're at a little bit mentally after another loss to LSU in overtime, but that track record speaks for itself. Saban's been able to get these guys, pick them up off the mat and have them ready to go for the next game. So Alabama or nothing for me. I've got my reservations, but no, I wouldn't be looking at Ole Miss. Again, that track record is just insane. Off a loss, Nick Saban with Alabama. What do you think here, Conor Mac?
Yeah, off a loss. It has been pretty good. You know what I like here more? I think Bama plays well. I think the over is just the play. I think you just take this over here. Ole Miss hasn't been able to stop anybody. I've seen some shitty teams move the ball. Alabama is not. The only thing is this defense, pitch a shutout or whatever. Mississippi State at 6 points. But I think good old Lane is going to have some plays, up
Bye
his
week
sleeve.
2 for Ole Miss, by the way. Yep.
Yeah. So in Oxford, I think we get a back and forth a little bit. Alabama might win cover, but I lean over here.
That was alarming to see that Alabama defense against LSU. So I think Jackson Dart could probably move the ball a little bit. Judkins running the football as well. They got Jonathan Mingo leading a great receiver for Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They can make some plays, I think, in this game. I'm with you on the over. I would bet that too. And Alabama might run it up on this Ole Miss defense as well.
Maybe. I don't know what the last 7-8 years, every game's gone over. Last year, 42-21 is right at this number. But all the other ones gone way over in the 60s, these games.
Yeah, exactly. And
70s,
I remember
80s.
Yeah, exactly. And look at these meetings. Look at these recent meetings here. 66-3 Alabama, 62-7 Alabama, 59-31 Alabama, 63-48 Alabama, 42-21 Alabama. I think the last 2 years were the Matt Corral years at quarterback for Ole Miss. But still, Kiffin has not gotten the job done with Ole Miss against Nick Saban and Alabama. So this would be Alabama laying the points in the over. Definitely my side in total. Looks in this game would be that. All right, Iowa State, Oklahoma State next up here in the Big 12. It looks like we've got a near pick'em here in this game. Iowa State 1-point road favorites, 48.5 being the total in this game. Obviously tough sledding the last couple weeks for Oklahoma State. The Kansas State game was not good. They get rolled by K-State. And then last week against Kansas, 37-16 loss. In that performance, they didn't even go to Gunnar Gundy. They actually went to Gary Rangel at the quarterback spot, and he was not very good for Oklahoma State.
What was that about? I didn't ever hear why they did that. And Gundy's kid didn't play.
Because we all thought the son of the coach was in line to be the quarterback there with Spencer Sanders out, and it just didn't happen. It ended up being Rangel there at quarterback for Oklahoma State. And I'm trying to see what the decision regarding that was, but it was Garrett Rangel, which is surprising. It shocked everybody because everybody just thought that Mike Gundy's going to give his kid the start, but that did not happen in that game. So what will we do here? I mean, Spencer Sanders has definitely had shoulder problems for weeks. He has not been a healthy quarterback. We're going to have to wait and see how he fares here if he does come back. But again, that's an unknown. I can't bet this until I know if he's in. Rangel couldn't play. He struggled against a Kansas defense that's not exactly the 85 Bears, by the way, and he still didn't exactly move the ball. They need Spencer in there. I mean, if they're going to get the season turned around, snap this losing streak, but we don't know if he's going to play. And until I know if he's going to play, I can't bet the game. I want to bet Oklahoma State. I think they've been incredibly devalued. Home underdogs to a mediocre Iowa State team. I want to bet Oklahoma State. No question here, but I got to wait and see if Sanders plays before I decide. What do you think?
Yeah, total weight on this. Not much to touch on. Yeah, I just questioned that move, and he wasn't very good. Kansas just rolled them. Iowa State, big win last week, but West Virginia at home. That's where I like them. Good defense. Can it keep them in this game? But I don't know if they can win. And Sanders has got to be in, to even look at Oklahoma State. But I think something's wrong with his shoulder, or it's, maybe he's trying to get through the year. I don't know, before surgery. So this is a game, wait and see, or just don't bet it.
Definitely one of those games you got to wait to see his status. Nebraska, Michigan next up here in the Big Ten. Michigan, obviously, heavily favored in this game over Nebraska. 29-point home favorites, 50.5 the total. I'm probably not going to play it. I mean, Michigan still ended up, to their credit, winning and covering against Rutgers when they were down, in the second quarter. They're actually trailing in that game. And then it was just an explosion. Floodgates opened in the second half. Touchdown, bang, pick six, another touchdown. And it just became a romp for Michigan against Rutgers in the second half. Nebraska was competitive last week against Minnesota. Defense played all right. 20-13 loss against Minnesota. But again, that offense is on shaky ground. Chuba Purdy was not good, 6 of 16. Logan Smothers got smothered, if you will, 5 of 10, 80 yards in that game. I mean, that's not the kind of quarterback production you need to stay competitive against Michigan. It's just not. So it's too many points, but I'm not interested in Nebraska. Easy pass, Conor Mac.
Yeah, too many points. I don't want to look really anything in this game. I do have to bring up, though, with Michigan. It happened, Indiana game. Came out flat. Michigan State, they were flat. That second half, they killed. And then just what you were talking about, Rutgers, came out slow start again. So maybe look to this team, Nebraska, early.
Nebraska first half, if you bet them. Yep.
First half, first quarter. It seems like Michigan, this second half, they get going, and that's when they've, take over the game. So I've seen that the last 3 out of the last 4 weeks with Michigan. So maybe that trend continues.
Yeah, definitely. So make sure you're aware of that. They've had slow starts. And look what they got next up. Illinois next week, Ohio State the week after. 2 huge games for Michigan. So, and this is definitely one where, again, you worry. Now, Thompson hasn't been ruled out for this game. Casey Thompson may actually come back here for Nebraska, but that we don't know as of yet early in the week. All right, North Texas UAB is the next game here. Conference USA. We've got North Texas, UAB rather, 6-point home favorites, 58 the total. I mean, this North Texas team has become pretty easy team for me to bet lately. Their offense has got it going. I mean, Seth Luttrell's offense is humming. 45, 47,
Great.
27. Yeah, 27 was the lowest number they put up against UTSA, 40 against Western Kentucky, 52 against Florida International. They have not been stopped. UAB last week in a crazy game with UTSA, back and forth, 44-38 it ended in that game. I'll be honest, UAB's offense with Zeno was more impressive than I thought it would be. You give him credit for that. Dwayne McBride had a huge day running the football. And the thing is, with North Texas's defenses, they're not good against the pass or the run. They're just not good in general. You got to think Dwayne McBride's going to have a big day running the ball, and that's going to open things up in the play action game, the passing game for Zeno, who was actually better than I expected against UTSA, or maybe even a returning Dylan Hopkins, because I think there's still a potential he may be able to return for this game. But either way, I like points. That's where I'm going in this game rather than either side. I'd actually lean to North Texas a little bit, plus points. I don't like laying points usually with North Texas, but start to look at North Texas lately. Conor Mac as a dog. 10-point dogs at UTSA, lose by 4. 10-point dogs at Western Kentucky, win outright. 3-point dogs, Florida Atlantic, win outright at Memphis. 13-point dogs, they cover the number. In their last 4 tries as underdogs, 4-0 against the spread. I'm leaning to the mean green here, catching points. UAB just not the same defense this year. Still a solid team, but not the same on defense. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, that's why I kind of want to lean to the over. This defense hasn't been the same. North Texas, just offensively, has been really, really good. Lighting it up as of late. You mentioned Zeno was good. I didn't think they just got in a back and forth there with UTSA to OT. I mean, ended up losing it, but North Texas has just been like, I didn't see them beating down Western Kentucky. They should have beat UTSA. They were celebrating on the sidelines and got beat. This team's got better, it seems like, every week. So right now I lean over. This is high, but UAB I just don't think it's the same defensively. So I think it could climb over. And I like the points. I think this one could be tight. Maybe even a North Texas, another outright win.
It's funny with UAB, they're not even guaranteed of a bowl game right now, so they have work to do in terms of even getting to the 6 wins they need to be bowl eligible at this point of the season. They're only 4-5. They're 2-4 in the conference. So I think they missed Bill Clark a little bit too. I think we're finding out he's a hell of a head coach, and they missed that guy after he suddenly retired in the offseason. And let's not lose sight of the fact that Bill Clark did a hell of a job with this program, and I think they're missing his acumen from a coaching standpoint right now. Army and Troy next up here. We've got should be an interesting one. This Troy defense continues to play very well for them. Troy is going to be a tough defense for them to navigate. Troy 9-point home favorites, 47 being the total in this game. And the biggest concern right away when you look at this matchup is the great Troy run defense. 21st, 113 rushing yards per game. In theory, it's a matchup where they should do well against the triple option offensive Army. We'll see if that is indeed the case here. But again, talking about a Troy team off a defensive war with ULL. They just got the 23-17 win. They had a big road win on the Sun Belt. Before that, South Alabama. They are firmly solidified and I've got Sun Belt. I've got Troy not only over their win total, I have a ticket on them to win the Sun Belt. So I'm go Troy all the way. 5-1, leading the West Division. Right now it would be a Coastal Carolina, Troy, Sun Belt championship game. But now you go out of conference, face this Army team. It's not a Troy spot. It's a good matchup for Troy, but it's not a Troy spot. I mean, they've had these big conference games. They're battling for first. Now you have to play Army all of a sudden, right in the middle of the conference season. So let's see how they handle it. That being said, I don't know if Army's going to move the ball here. That Troy run defense is no freaking joke. Tough game, real tough game. I'm probably going to end up passing. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get involved. I like Troy. These points, though, is not what I like them. Almost double digits at 10. Troy, every Troy game to the under with just about has been money. And then but the other side, Army's dead over, except last week, which was automatic. Take the points, take that 7 and that under. Air Force, all those games go under. So this may be Army scores, but I think the Troy defense is solid. I'd still lean under, especially at 47, 46 and a half, which is right now. If it keeps creeping up, I go back to it. I think that Troy's defense is that good, and they should score on Army. I just don't know if I want to lay 10. Troy, though, very good football team.
All right, South Carolina and Florida now in the SEC meeting up. We've got Florida currently in this game. Looks like 8-point favorites. The total right now sitting at 59 across the board in this game. When you look at it here, South Carolina, they got the win and cover last week against Vanderbilt. I like South Carolina in that spot after the loss to Missouri. I thought they got devalued a little bit. But now they're going on the road facing Florida. Big difference. Florida, a 41-24 win against A&M. One of the best games of the season from that offense, although we know the A&M defense is kind of falling apart. But let's not take it completely away from Anthony Richardson and the way he played for Florida. Montrell Johnson was good running the football, as was Trevor Etienne for Florida. Nice tandem there running the football. South Carolina on defense struggled to stop the run, and that's my big fear for them here in this game against Florida. Florida is a very much run-skewed offense, and South Carolina run defense has given up 172 rushing yards per game, 99th in the country against the run, and allowing 4.4 yards per carry. That is a concern, to be sure, when you're playing this Florida team. So I'd probably gravitate more toward potentially the over. It's not like Florida's defense is going to completely shut down Spencer Rattler and the South Carolina offense. We have started to see a little bit more high-scoring ways from this South Carolina team. The Vanderbilt game got to 65 points. 30-24 against A&M, 54 points in that game. This total sitting at a 59. It could get there because, again, I don't know if this run defense is going to be able to handle Florida, and that's obviously the key to shutting down Florida's offense. So I'd lean a little bit to the over here in this game. Sidewise, Florida's got a matchup edge. I don't know if I want to lay this many, though. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to lay 7.5. I lean Florida. So here, I kind of lean the over. Florida's been regularly kind of getting in the 40s. I think it can just get over this total. Rattler's turnover prone. We know that. You talk how bad their run defense is. Florida, though, obviously we all knew, kind of got in the word that A&M, had this flu. But that second half just shut them down. A&M scored there that first half, very close. Didn't score a point. Second half, Florida just blew them away in that one. So, yeah, lean Florida. I don't think I'm going to lay the points. And, yeah, I think it can just get over.
Yeah, exactly. And look, the Florida defensive numbers aren't very good either. So that's why I think Christian Beal-Smith, the running game, and then Rattler throwing it off play action, they can work enough. I think they could move the ball. But, again, I don't think South Carolina is going to have an easy time of it with that leaky run defense against Florida, which is why I'm more toward looking at the over here in this game. All right, Kansas State, Baylor. Back to the Big 12 we go here. This should be an interesting matchup. We've got Baylor, 3-point home favorites in Waco, 53 the total in this game. It's probably one of those games where, with the number being at 3, right on 3 with Baylor as a 3-point home favorite, I'm not in a rush to bet it at the number it's at. It's been well priced, well lined. Baylor's won 3 in a row against Kansas, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma. They're at home here against K-State off a loss to Texas, 34-27. But Kansas State catching points, Chris Kleiman has carried on the tradition of Bill Snyder being a very good underdog head coach, ATS, during his time at Kansas State. We know the Wildcats got Adrian Martinez back at the quarterback spot against Texas. He played all right. I mean, it really wasn't his fault. They ran the football. He ran it pretty well. He had a good number. He had one interception, but still a good completion rate. It was the defense, couldn't get stops on Texas and Quinn Ewers when they needed it. That's going to be the concern here. How about Baylor? Dave Aranda, known for defense, 6 straight overs, though, for Baylor coming into this game. 6-0 to the over in their last 6 games. It's kind of the way it's been going lately with these Big 12 games. More overs than unders. So I'd probably lean over at a modest 53 when it comes to this total. But for a side, I'm probably passing. As long as this number stays static at -3, I don't want to go against Baylor just laying a field goal at home, but the K-State underdog track record is strong. So if anything, I'd maybe look to the over, but a tough side for me to call on this one. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, with the total, even K-State's gone over, lately too. Some of these games are just got over. Baylor, you mentioned, has gone over. In this rivalry's kind of been high scoring. Last year, they lost in Manhattan to Baylor 20-10. In Waco, 31-21. Manhattan, they lost again by 20. But in Waco, again, they lost by 3, 37-34. K-State always isn't the same on the road. I don't know. I want more here with K-State. I don't know if 3. It just seems like this game could be a coin flip either way. I like how Baylor's been playing. And I've took, last week I loved them versus Oklahoma and that over. But yeah, probably going to stay out the side. I'm going to look in this total more because maybe this is just too light. Maybe this should be like a 57 or 58. So right now I lean over.
They allowed 70 rushing yards to Dylan Gabriel against Oklahoma. Mobile quarterback. What are they going to see here, Baylor? Mobile quarterback. Adrian Martinez likes to run with it. So mobile quarterbacks may be a little bit of a problem the last couple of games for Baylor. And we'll see if that opens up things for Martinez here. Kansas and Texas Tech now, another Big 12 game. We've got certainly Kansas clinching bowl eligibility. What a celebration that was in Lawrence after beating Oklahoma State, getting that 6th win. Congrats to Lance Leipold and Kansas. What a coaching job by him to get this team to a bowl game. I never thought they'd get to a bowl game anytime soon, even just a couple years ago. Hell, I was wondering if they'd win a Big 12 game. Even just a couple of years ago. And here they are at 6 wins. Been a great story in college football. But now they're 4-point road underdogs here at Texas Tech, 65 the total. I mean, it's been musical chairs with Texas Tech's quarterbacks, and nobody can. I'm starting to think now we got to abandon this strategy. Nobody can get into rhythm. Baron Morton, Tyler Shuck, Donovan Smith, nobody can get into any sort of rhythm right now for Texas Tech. So I think if you're Joey McGuire, it's time to commit to, I think, one quarterback and go from there. We'll see if they do that. It's not the kind of spot that I'm, as much as, Kansas is a dog, I've pretty much bet them every time. They've been a dog this year. This is the one spot where I might be more reluctant because they had the big 6th win bowl eligibility clinching victory last week, and they partied their freaking tails off. You can tell. Just getting to a bowl game was huge for this program. Do they have the requisite focus here for Texas Tech? That's the question that I worry about here. But so for that reason, I'm probably off the side. Kansas games, usually I will only lean over, but Texas Tech's offense been a little bit sputtering the last couple weeks. And, Kansas with Bean at quarterback, as opposed to Daniels, a little bit more methodical in their games as well. So I may lay off this game entirely, side and total, because as of right now, I don't have a strong feel for either. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, we mentioned it like you just did on Saturday too. I'd hate the quarterback thing. Just stick to one. And then the guy gets hurt, which has happened a shit ton. Bring in the next guy. Texas Tech. If you back them and you didn't get the 10 with the push, and you had 9 or 8.5, they just kind of folded there in the 4th quarter. 21 points to TCU, and they lose by 10 after their defense, I thought, played well all game long. This seems like a great spot. As long as Texas Tech takes care of the ball, I think they can win here. But it's at 4. I don't think I want to get involved. But you're right. Kansas, the big win, all excited, bowl eligible. Now they hit the road here. I think I'm going to stay off.
I just has that feel like it's just, I don't want to say no show, but if Kansas has less than their A game here, I wouldn't be shocked. Washington and Oregon now, Pac-12 action. We've got Oregon and this just incredible offense that Bo Nix is directing, 13.5-point home favorites, 72.5, 73 being the total. This total's been pounded up. I totally get it. How is Washington going to stop this offense? I mean, this is not even a very good Washington defense, especially of late, where we've seen the Huskies, give up big points. I mean, 39 to Arizona, 45 to Arizona State, 40 to UCLA. Every good offense has moved the ball. Plummer and Cal moved the ball against them. Hell, even Oregon State, with the backup quarterback, Gulbranson, moved the ball pretty decently against Washington. They're not going to. I mean, Oregon's getting into the 40s now. That's now during this 9-game win streak for Oregon, 8-game win streak for Oregon. They've hit the 40s in every game. So you might as well pencil in Oregon for 40 here in this game. But Washington can still put up some points with their own offense and Michael Penix Jr. And Oregon's secondary is the one little chink in the armor with their defense. They're pretty good against the run, but against the pass, they're giving up 276 through the air, yards per game, 117 in the country. Pass defense is Oregon, and this is a pass-heavy offense for Kalen DeBoer and Washington with Penix. So I understand why the total opened in the mid-60s and got hammered up. It's in the low 70s now, and I think it's still climbing. Points, and more points is what I see here. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I'm definitely not taking the under. That's for damn sure in this one. And Washington, they don't want to run it. In Oregon State game, I don't think they really ran it in the second half. They're just going to throw it 65 times. So's Oregon. But, Oregon's been getting these wins, Ian, and just covering the number. If you've been backing them by like a point, not last week, obviously, at Colorado, but the weeks before that.
I think Oregon. I think Oregon laying the points is what I really want to bet Oregon. I feel the number's a little bit short with Oregon at home, with the way Washington's been kind of terrible on the road this year. But at the same time, they've got Utah next week, Oregon, and that look ahead situation might temper my enthusiasm a little bit.
We'll see. If this touches 14, I could get involved because this just swings backdoor. This if they're up by 20, Penix comes down, touchdown. And you get the cover. So I'd be leery of the side here.
Yeah. The Oregon team total over might be in the offing too. All right, we got 4 games left. Georgia, Mississippi State. Georgia 17-point favorites here in this one. The total currently at 53.5 in this game. Georgia off the massive win against Tennessee. Can they maintain focus here? These are tough games to bet because Georgia we know is better. And I stepped in front of Georgia last week against Tennessee, paid the price for it. And although I did have them against Oregon, I should have known we'd get their A game. And, it seems like the bigger the game, the bigger the opponent, the better Georgia plays. I said that on Twitter. And that's exactly what we see from them. The Oregon and the Tennessee games, the 2 toughest games I think they've played this year, were the 2 best games I think they've played this season. You've got Mississippi State surviving an Auburn team that showed plenty of juice, plenty of energy in the first game after Brian Harsin got injured, but Mississippi State survives 39-33. You absolutely love it. Mike Leach is folding up the deck chairs because he didn't like the way his receivers were playing. He refused to let them sit down during the game when the defense was on the field, so he's folding up the deck chairs. That Mike Leach, man, never a dull moment with him. That was pretty funny to see that last week against Auburn, but one thing we see from Mississippi State is when they've played some damn good football teams this year, they've struggled. I mean, the best win they have is Arkansas, and A&M was a big win, but A&M's fallen apart. Against LSU, they get blasted. Kentucky, they lose by double digits. Alabama, they lose by 24. No, I'm not taking Mississippi State here in this one. But again, Georgia, the biggest win of their season so far. Are they focused enough? And they did let Missouri hang around when they went on the road at Missouri, so you can't lose sight of that. So that's what makes it a tough handicap here. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I don't want to get involved here. It just seems like flat way better. But you just brought it up. These good teams, they got their ass whipped was Mississippi State. But Georgia flat, they're at home. This is the one spot you like. Mississippi State, their defense though isn't very good. That's just the problem in this spot. This is one I don't want to have anything to do with. I'd want some more points with Mississippi State. Give me 21 and maybe look at them.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. And series history, by the way, with these two teams, last year was close. It was 31-24 for Georgia in Athens last year. But
This,
the year before, the year
yeah,
before was 31, or actually it was a few years. That was 2 years ago, actually. They played Mississippi. Then before that, it was 2017. So they didn't play
maybe look
last.
at them early, real quick, just clean flat. They're at home. They get a quick touchdowner or two until Georgia wakes up.
North Carolina, Wake Forest here next up. North Carolina, Wake Forest continues to just go sideways here these last few weeks. Will the falling off continue for Wake Forest here? But Wake Forest is 3.5-point home favorites here, 76 the total. I have to look at North Carolina here. I mean, I don't like the trajectory of Wake Forest. It was self-inflicted wounds. They lost to Louisville. Last week, it was just the offense got bogged down and shut down by NC State, and their backup quarterback, MJ Morris, he outplayed Sam Hartman and made that Wake Forest defense look rough. And that Wake Forest defense, which started out the season thinking, pretty good defense, but then they had the Liberty game, the Clemson game gave up 51. They gave up 48 to Louisville, 30 to NC State. So that defense is starting to go backwards as well for Wake Forest. And Sam Hartman's play is going backwards a bit too, which has kind of been his history, his MO. The later the season goes, the worse he starts to play. North Carolina's on a roll, 5 straight wins. They've covered in 3 of those, but now they're in their preferred role because that defense is still a little bit of a problem. Hell, Virginia went up and down the field against them at times. So it tells you that defense is still can be a little suspect at times, no question. But now they're catching points here in this game. Total's extremely high. I mean, I think they priced me out of this over. 76.5. I mean, I could probably only bet the over here, but 76.5 is very high. That being said, 58-55 last year, 59-53 the year before that. Over 100 points.
Yeah.
The last 2 meetings for these two teams. So that's why this total's high. I don't know if I'll get there with the total. It's just too damn high. But I probably will get there with North Carolina. 3 in the hook in this game as an underdog. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think this is where I talk about it. Last week, Carolina won that game. If they're laying points, don't take them. If they're catching points because of shitty defense in a game like this, I think it's worth a shot. I'm not crazy about it, but if this was flipped, there's just no way you could take him. Hartman's been bad, man. Those last 2 games have been horrible. Yeah, I'm bummed. I liked NC State and I didn't take him. I was worried about the quarterback situation. The last few years, like you mentioned, it's just going way over this total. But god damn, I don't know. Could we get another game like that? I mean, we just saw the SMU Houston game, the high scoring game ever. So yeah, there should be points. It's just, do you want to take this high number?
They're cruising right now in the Coastal Division of the ACC, North Carolina. It looks like we're on a collision course for a North Carolina-Clemson ACC championship game as of right. Drake May been outstanding. I mean, if only he had some kind of defense, they'd be blowing teams out right now with that offense. But that defense has been not good for as good as the offense has been, and it's been really good, the offense for UNC. TCU and Texas now. What a matchup here in the Big 12. Obviously, TCU, look, they keep on finding ways to get it done. Right now in this game, we've got Texas right now 7-point home favorites in this game, 65 being the total, pretty much across the board. I've completely pivoted where I think TCU overvalued. I have said that a bunch regarding this team. Now I think, they keep finding ways. There's people say, they're lucky, they're a little fortunate. They have these periods during the game where they get stalled a bit. Defense gives up some plays, but at the end of the day, they're making the plays to win the game and cover the number. And they've done that 3 in a row against Kansas State, West Virginia, Texas Tech. Now they're getting points here. They've only been an underdog once this year, and it was when they destroyed Oklahoma 55-24. TCU plus the points for me. I mean, I'm actually more than a little bit surprised they're getting 7 here in this game. Now, I know there's going to be people saying undefeated team getting 7. Something smells here, right? It's just what's going on here, right? Undefeated team playing so well, they're getting 7. It feels like a trap. They're going to lay the points with Texas. Maybe there's something to that, but I don't know. Texas hasn't exactly been convincing in a lot of games. They had the Texas Tech loss. the Iowa State win by 3, lose to Oklahoma State, beat Kansas State by 7, and they got outgained in each of the last 3 games. Texas, they've lost the yardage battle. I mean, I have to look TCU here. I mean, this team's too good to be getting 7, yet it also feels like, wait a minute, why are they getting 7 here in this game? Undefeated, finding ways to win, the electrifying offense with Kendre Miller, the running back, good receivers. Max Duggan is just a warrior, throwing the ball around, running it every chance he gets. I mean, so it's a little puzzling. TCU's getting this many points. What do you think? But it's the only way I would bet at TCU. What do you think, Con?
Yeah, that's exactly what, people are going to say. How can, this team undefeated, be getting the 7? I don't know. I don't want to get involved. 7 seems like it's high. It seems like this would have been the perfect to be at like 6.5. Surprised it's 7.
I think you come back to the over as well, because that Texas Tech TCU game stayed under. But do you know how many points Texas Tech left on the field by going for it on 4th down over and over and over and over again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
TCU's in the end made the plays like you talked about. For some reason, I just think the game would be close because they've made those plays. Whether the defense gives up some, they come right back and score all year long. So, yeah, I'm not so sure. These points, too, just seem kind of crazy, and you want to take them. I'm going to wait all week a little bit on this one. So right now, it's just a pass.
Keep in mind, Quinn Ewers back for Texas the last few games, and boy, is he playing well for the Texas Longhorns. So that is going to be a challenge here for the TCU defense, no question about that. All right, the final game here of this Hitting the Book show for this week, Florida State, Syracuse. We've got this should be an interesting one in the ACC. Right now, we've got Florida State 6.5 7-point road favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. You look at it from Florida State, that was a dismantling. And I said, people were saying, you don't want to lay points. Miami will show up for this game. Miami's no fucking good. All right, enough. I'm sick of hearing about Miami. They suck. They blow. They're terrible. And they end up losing 45-3 in that game against Florida State. And Cristobal, anybody still think this guy's a coach that's going to get you to the promised land? I think not. So, yeah, just a disaster again for Miami. 45-3. Playing good football, Florida State. There's no question about that. Again, with Syracuse, the season's kind of going the other way for them. That Clemson loss was the start of the decline. They get blown out by Notre Dame at home. They lose 19-9, no offense whatsoever. They're keying in on Sean Tucker because nobody respects this backup quarterback, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who was 8-23 for just 120 passing yards against Pitt. No Schrader, no Syracuse for this guy. It would only look Florida State here in this game. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I can't take Syracuse either. Not just here at 7, a touchdown. I know they'll be at home. You know what I think comes to play? The one thing they could hang their hat on a little bit is their defense. And you just mentioned they can't score. They're going to have trouble. Florida State, perhaps pretty good. I like the under. Yeah, I think it's just a little bit too high. If you can get under 52, maybe, or even if it's a little higher, the key number here at 52, I like the under in this one. You're right, Florida State playing good. This would be, though, a good win, even though Syracuse banged up the backup QB. To go in there and win, those are big wins for a team that's turning it around. So I don't know if I lay it, but I like the under here.
All right, liking the under with Florida State and Syracuse. And, of course, their quarterback, by the way, continues for Florida State to play really well. He just torched the Miami defense. Jordan Travis was outstanding against Miami, and the run game just destroyed them. Trey Benson had 128 rushing yards. They got Toa Feely had 52 as well. So it was just dismantling on the ground, too. Of that Miami defense. And worth noting, too, about the Syracuse defense this season, they've struggled a lot more against the run this year. So, and 61st in terms of run defense, 141. So Florida State, they might be able to get that run game going. We'll see if that's the case. Great stuff. What a show. I feel always better about the college football card, the bets that I'm looking to make after we talk it out every single Monday right here on the Hitting the Book show with Conor Mac. Hit the like button before we wrap things up. Definitely do that. Helps us out a lot. Remember, Connor and I are back later today at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific for the season premiere of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. We'll break down not every game because we'll be here forever, but we will break down several of the marquee games tonight. Connor will give the bets he likes. I'll give the bets I like. We'll give you best bets at the end of the show. We'll answer some questions. So college basketball net profit, it'll be 3 days a week here at the beginning of the season. Whatever 3 days that I determine will be the days with the busiest amount of games are usually going to be the days we do the show. So 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Join us for that. And, of course, I'll be on the NBA Pub Up, 4 p.m. Eastern as well later today. All right, we'll wrap it up in just a second after we hear from Southtown 101 and Manscaped. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, and manscaped.com. 20% off the purchase of anything on the site using the promo code PubSports. Another great edition of Hitting the Books in the books for this Monday, November 7th. We've only got a few more regular season shows, but we'll do like we did last year too. We'll do bowl preview shows on Mondays of every bowl game like we did last year. So we'll have the bowl games covered once we get into December as well. So every game we got it here for you on Hitting the Books. Conor Mac, final words before we say goodbye.
As always, I got to hit the chat. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We appreciate it. Sorry we're so locked in the games. I can't always get to the chat during the show, but that'll be different on the basketball show. We want you guys involved and throw out some games because we can't get all of these. There's like 120 or whatever the hell they are. Lance the Roast, Tip the Cap, Nunya, James S., Robert Franklin, good to see you. Mike Dale, what's up? A member. Shout out to him, Nunya, member. Nick, what's up, my man? Good to see you. Nikki Fish Tanks. So I'll drop in here. RVD 420. Shout out to everyone. Leo, read the room. Shout out to everyone. Andrew G, Creekman, G Martinez, Elliot V, everyone. Chip Pilar, what up, my man? Hit the like Ian said. We got to get out of here. We got shit to do.
Exactly. I got another show to do, and then we got 2 more pub shows to do. So we're just getting started with yours truly here on a Monday. But great stuff for Conor Mac. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy the college football action. Cash some tickets, and we'll be back next Monday for another edition of Hitting the Books right here on Pub Sports Radio.
Welcome to another edition of The Barking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of